Economics is built on the rationale that people act in the way that is logically in their own self-interest with all of the information that they have available. However, it turns out that no matter where you look, that just isn't true. People tend to misbehave. Misbehaving by Richard Thaler is about all the ways that traditional economics doesn't work. He's a student of Daniel Kahneman, the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, and he, like his mentor, believes that people are more psychologically inclined. More often, people will buy or do things according to their intuition, according to a sense of fairness, according to a sense of what they feel is right, rather than what they think is actually true. Richard Thaler looked at the way traditional economics is working, and he said, it kind of feels like traditional economics only works if you have perfect willpower, the ability to see every option available to you for every decision you make, and the ability to quickly analyze all of those options and figure out the best possible optimization for them. That does not feel like something that it is possible for people to do. For example, he looked at people at a party who might put away pistachios because they do not want to ruin their appetite before dinner. This, from the point of view of an econ, which is the word he uses to refer to the examples of humans given by economists as opposed to how humans actually are, is just a completely irrational choice. Why would you want to get rid of an option? If you want to eat pistachios, then just leave them on the table. If you can't, you're just stupid. Same thing with any other decision in your life. If you ever buy something for sentimental reasons, why, that's just stupid. Let's say you really wanted to go to a concert and your friend knew you wanted to go to a concert, but you just didn't have the money for it. You need to save and scrimp and get by just to pay your meals and get through with your rent. But then your birthday is coming up. Your friend buys you those tickets. And what do? Well, you sell the tickets in order to afford next month, of course. That's the rational and sane thing to do. Is that what you would actually do in that circumstance? Would you give up the thing that you wanted to do what is practically true if it was just given to you as a gift? Be honest. Examples of this kind of irrational behavior pervade every decision that people seem to make, according to the heuristics found by Daniel Kahneman and put into the book Misbehaving. By the way, if you want a book with more numbers, Misbehaving is it. It has formula for what kind of studies that they actually did, whereas Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow is more broken down into the concepts that we can implement into our daily lives. So this one's a harder read, but it might be more informative to people who are willing to sift through the data. He also found that people are more likely to do the right thing if it's something that they can dedicate for themselves in the future, or if it's something that they can do automatically. Things like having to opt out of something that's a good decision already made for them instead of opt in. Being an organ donor was the example he used. If you need to opt out of being an organ donor, there is a significantly higher chance that a population will remain an organ donor, as opposed to having an opt-in. He doesn't find this option particularly good, though, because usually people are lazy and don't get around to actually doing it. And then when death happens, there's legal complications in a fairly standard way. So for him, he thinks that making it a prompted choice is a better option, where when you get your, let's say, DMV card in the United States, they ask you whether you want to be an organ donor or not, and you are forced to make the choice then. Having these prompted choices, or having things that you can opt in or opt out of, and having the standard choice being the one that is, as far as science is currently concerned, the best one, or the most useful to the most citizens, seems like the way to go. In fact, every time they've used one of these nudging techniques to help out, it's managed to create drastically more efficient systems. Things like saving for retirement now have a nudge system, where they have something like pay yourself tomorrow. A portion of your paycheck just goes to it. There are some help in order to get you started, and then more and more people are saving for retirement because these systems are now in place. Because assuming that people are perfectly rational and willing to save for tomorrow because it's obvious that they'll need it, is stupid, because traditional economics assumption that everyone is a super genius and Spock is clearly wrong. Although I still find it funny that they don't assume infinite creativity with that, because then you would have infinite options. Richard Thaler makes a fairly convincing argument that economics, despite being not exactly a hard science, should be treated as one. You should make surveys, policies, whatever kind of data collection you can use in order to treat it more like hypothesis being confirmed. Too much of traditional economics was based on solid reasoning and solid axioms that seemed to be true without actually being tested. People assume that humans are rational when the data shows that we actually can't be. There is an energy limit to how rational we can be. We need to assume that some level of inefficiency is destined to happen. And with certain styles of life, it's just impossible to make the decisions on everyday life. There's too many options available for even standard choices. People get into a routine which may probably not be the most efficient routine that they can do. Even the time taken to adjust that routine, you just might not get it, and you might get used to it. That's how people are. More and more policymakers are starting to look to behavioral economics instead of traditional economics for making their policy choices. Traditional economics seems to be helping companies that are on top. Behavioral economics seems to be helping people who are struggling, who are at the bottom, who are in the middle, who are emotional, who are most of us. Nudging seems to be providing a useful crutch to getting where a perfectly logical world could kinda sorta be. And that defense of what behavioral economics is, and that we need to recognize our heuristics, our biases, and that our emotions influence every conversation that we have, including this one to you right now, is at the heart of what this book is. However, to summarize the points, number one, traditional economics makes assumptions about people that are wrong, probably based off of the Enlightenment era. It assumes people are basically perfect, intelligent, rational people, which they aren't. Two, the traditional economic world has stated that economics will punish irrational behavior, when it turns out that most of our markets are actually trendy and tend to actually respond to economic models. A good example that they use in the book is companies that are perceived as losers, someone who screwed up, are often given lower value in the stock market than all of their goods would seem to indicate. And sometimes when a branch of a company breaks off and gets its own stock number, because people favor that branch, a branch of the company will somehow gain more value than the entire value of the company combined. These are irrational behaviors for people to consider the options. Basically, economics are trendy. 3, economics should use some sort of hypothesis model to confirm their suspicions. They should not take logical reasoning as the endpoint, but as the starting point. You need to test all of the assumptions inherent, or as many as possible, to see what is most rationally true for an economic model. No longer assume that people are rational creatures, or at least entirely rational, just capable of rational thought. Whatever number I'm on right now, people are bad with numbers and they hate losing things more than they like getting things. If you give someone $1,000 and take it away, based on the numbers shown so far, they will hate it 2.5 times as much as getting the thing in the first place. Because you ruin their plans. Number A, people do not exercise self-control very well. And you should not assume that they will continue to do things perfectly, especially when they get tired. Number Jupiter. People will make decisions based on what they perceive is fair. If they think something has a higher value than it actually does, then they'll pay for that. Likewise, if something seems to them to not be worth as much as it is, then they will not be willing to pay for it. And that is subjective. Number Dash. Loss aversion is important to humans, and people do not take rational risks out of fear that they will be blamed. So people are overly cautious and less likely to move forward because the benefit of getting something new is not worth the risk to credibility of a loss, even if logically it is. And number final, because people are incapable of making rational choices all the time, nudging them is ethical and maybe necessary for the continued organization of society. If all of that information and a lot more numbers sound useful to you, then I recommend Misbehaving by Richard Thaler. I hope you enjoy. I'll see you later. Bye, everyone. I misbehave and you think I'm dense. You hand me your rules and they're so condensed. But I see you ain't following them too, so I think you don't make sense.